I don't know if I can articulate this, but I wanted to explore this thing about spiritual bypass and kind of the idea that we're spiritually bypassing our emotions and important things. And what I have found being with you is that I'm actually going deeper into a more profound state into those emotions. I'm not bypassing them. I mean, it was a concern that I had. I had emotional stuff. And so I would love to explore, or if you can talk in different ways about how what you're talking about is not spiritual bypass.
Well, spiritual bypass doesn't actually exist. It's just giving a name. It's giving a name. So that takes care of that. Next, it's giving it's giving a name to the standard condition, which is relating to fantasies. You know, I mean, the whole spiritual problem is to learn to orient towards actuality as it is, as opposed to orienting towards it as you imagine it is. That's the entirety of yoga. It's the entirety of spirituality. So spiritual bypass is just another instance of that. You know, you're imagining it's something, and you're oriented to that, which involves all sorts of partializations and distortions that are not accurate, which you know tends to muddy up or murky up relating to what actually is present. But again, it's not a special case. It's no different than, you know, if you're interpreting anything as actually being the way that you imagine.
And it's actually more profound. I mean, I know what I'm trying to get to. It seems like in a lot of the non-dual tradition, we end up flatlining. We see it as a fantasy, and then we flatline. You know, oh, this isn't real. This is an illusion. You know, the partner doesn't exist.
Yeah,
that's not.
But that's a fantasy. Here. That's a fantasy. Yeah. Anything basically that can be articulated that you hope to actually be that way is a fantasy. So right. This is not real as a fantasy. This is real as a fantasy. This is open-endedly, you know, question mark, whatever, letting it be what it is rather than holding it as being this or that is the naked presence of actuality.
And that's where you get all the nourishment.
Yeah, because fantasizing is partializing. Fantasizing is very censorious. It makes things much smaller because fantasies are linear. They're finite. And actuality is infinite. It's completely nonlinear. It's completely irrational. So it's so much bottomlessly more than some version that you can imagine in your head or define with concepts. So to orient to this in terms of concepts and fantasies is to shortchange yourself from acknowledging and hence enjoying the fullness of what it really is. You create a very paltry stick figure, a very paltry kind of caricature of what it is, and think that that's what it is.
Right. So if you think you're dealing with your emotions or you're dealing with your relationships, you're actually just dealing with another fantasy.
Yeah,
whereas
of
if
course.
you really just look deeper,
yeah,
you have the most ultimate relationship.
Yeah.
You have more, so you're not excluding it, it's actually inclusive.
Yeah, because there's no such thing as exclude or include, so how could you exclude it? And there's no such thing as emotions. You know, what we think of as emotions is here, but what is here is so vastly beyond what anyone could you know, imagine as being emotions versus some non-emotions or what have you. So when you're open to the fullness, it's like taking the blinders off. You know, instead of having this real simple, very censored, narrow, linear, pathetic version, it's like, whoa, you know. And it is what it is. It's exactly the way it is, with perfect clarity and self-verifying, you know, presentation. And that's all that there is that. And there's no possibility of being cut off from it or not being cut off from it, for that matter, because being cut off itself is a fantasy. It includes itself with absolute intimacy and absolute inclusiveness. It is itself. So there's no separation whatsoever. There's no division whatsoever. There's no, this versus that whatsoever. To create those kinds of conditions, they have to be imagined into existence because they don't exist. Separation doesn't exist. So to have separation, you have to pretend that it does, basically. You have to tell yourself that it does and then hypnotize yourself that it's really like that. And then you can wander around in a daze thinking that it really is like that, but you're just a crazy person.
That's great, thank you. That's a really good question. Yeah. I mean, it is because people do, they miss the richness. I don't know what people do, but it seems to be that there is kind of this backing away from the fantasy and staying in this flatlined awakened state where really it's this rich and messy and revelation.
It's chaos. It's infinite transcendental chaos. There's no structure whatsoever.
Yeah, and it has the lover in it, it has the mother, it has the father, it has all the relationships inside of it. So yeah, there is no spiritual bypass, like you said.
No, but the problem is assuming that there's such a thing as spirituality. So all of these, all these spiritual philosophies and schools and practices and blah blah blah, what have you, don't exist. They're fantasies. They're imagined into existence. So there is, again, that there's anything spiritual or non-spiritual, that there's any realization or non-realization. All of this is just imaginary. Right. All there is this, and it is exactly this. Always has been, always will be, and here it is. And it's never not been like that. So to have it be anything other than that, you have to imagine into existence, and then you're a crazy person, which of course is the very issue that genuine spirituality addresses, which is, well, you're a crazy person. It's possible you can discover that and see through it, at which point you have access to the actuality, even if you continue to be a crazy person in terms of the mechanisms of your personality. But that's neither here nor there, because who gives a shit?
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I always used to just discount that richness by just saying, I'm just daydreaming, or
exactly.
I remember in 8th grade, I think I must have spent more than 50% of my classroom time just looking out the window, looking at clouds, and
only 50?
Going in and out of the with the teacher come in and every once in a while. And all that stuff was still going on, and I got good grades, but and I still do. I still do that a lot. And even watching TV sometimes, I just go.
But that's all that there is.
Yeah.
There is no focus. The fantasy that there's a focus is just another fantasy.
Right.
Because even if there seems to be some degree of focus, there's such an infinity of non-focus that's always simultaneously present. It's like, why call it focus?
It's quite rich, actually. Yeah, that's true.
It's completely obvious if you just look at your experience, look at what is here. It's so non-linear and chaotic and absolutely unique and non-repeating and so on and so forth. It's just a matter of, well, look and see what's actually here and look and see the way in which it is what it is. And it's not hidden. It's not hidden. It's completely nakedly revealed. Okay, Gavin, your turn.
Okay. So I've been thinking recently about surrender and repose and yielding.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so there's so on the one hand there's this like fantasy that I have or idea that I have about, oh yes, maybe I have like physical problems or this and that because I've got this nervous energy, and so I could take CBD oil and improve on that, or whatever. I could just try to be more Tai Chi about my existence,
I'm not sure exactly what that means, but we'll let it go.
Yielding, going with the flow, whatever.
Right.
So that's sort of that's buying into the frame of the samsaric existence.
Yes.
And wanting to do something about that. Right?
Well, more so, it's buying into the frame of samsaric existence to imagine that you could do something about it. There's no such thing as yielding or not yielding. This is already completely yielded to what it is. It is what it is. What would yield to what?
Okay, but there is a sort of artfulness to navigating the samsaric.
There can seem to be, and there's nothing wrong with it participating with it that way. But in actuality, it's not really like that. It is already artful. The artfulness is already here. And coming to recognize that may, strangely, seem to make it more available, or maybe it's just that you're recognizing what has always been right here, so of course it's available. But that's unimportant because you end up with the result, so to speak, that you were shooting for.
So it's a matter of being a good magician.
It's a matter of seeing what is here.
Okay, so in terms of seeing what is here, I was rereading the Gospel of Thomas.
Yeah.
And there's some parts in there where he talks about repose, right? And he talks about be a passers-by, right? So there's this always everything is always moving and shifting, right? But there's a sort of a way to rest in that shifting, right? Or to
No, you notice that you already are always resting in it because there's no such thing as not resting in it. There's no you to rest or not rest. It rests in itself. And what that looks like may look like what you're calling resting or non-resting, but that's just imaginary spin doctoring. The actual condition is already established. Period. So how are you going to rest in it or not rest in it? It's already resting in itself. The atmosphere is resting in itself. The atmosphere needs to not, what? It is itself, so of course it's resting in it. The field of infinite radiant presence alone is here, so of course it's resting in itself. And all of these apparent phenomena are just the apparitions of what that resting so-called may seem to look like. But they're neither here nor there because they aren't anything but that resting.
So there's a mistake maybe in my thinking that I have some idea that me as a character could come more into alignment with the way in which this rests in itself, or the realization
yes, you can't get more in alignment with it. You can possibly come to recognize it more clearly. You can't possibly come to recognize what is the case more clearly. And that may seem to be what you might call being in alignment with it. But in actuality, nothing has changed. You're just recognizing that you already are in alignment with it. Because how could you not be? It's doing it. How could you not be in alignment with it?
And that recognition is a recognition of participation
Of course, it participates in itself, but it's not, you have a fantasy that you exist. You don't exist, this exists. And what you think of as you is this. It's not like you're negating you. You're not taking you and saying, oh, I don't exist. It's not like, yeah, sure you exist, but you aren't you. You are this, and this exists. And this exists as you, this exists as the world, this exists as transcendental dimensions, this exists as absolutely nothingness, this exists as anything, any way that it does exist. So check out what those ways are.
I mean, the idea of recognition sort of mean in that it's somewhat fleeting. I mean, you said you can through which maturation and all that, you can get it a little bit, you can recognize it or more clearly, or you're more clearly recognizing.
You recognize with absolute clarity that it has absolutely no clarity.
Right. That's what's so interesting. So
yeah.
I mean, it's yeah, I guess what you're sort of saying is, clearly seeing.
Clearly seeing that this is exactly the way it is. It makes absolutely no sense.
Right, exactly.
It's complete irrational chaos, if anything,
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
But because recognition is
recognition is actually the invalidation of definition.
Right.
If you think you can define anything, you're imagining it. So recognition is recognizing you can't define anything. Recognition doesn't mean recognizing the ultimate definition. That means recognizing that definitions are a lie. They're a fabrication, they're spin doctrine. There is no definition.
Yeah, it's sort of
this is
glimpsing in a mirror or something. I mean, it's when you look in a mirror, you really think you're seeing something, right?
Sure.
But if you keep on looking, it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, sure.
I think I'm understanding. Last night I had a really intense experience where I was feeling the energy going up and down my body, and then my heart chakra was very intense, very powerful. And I was trying to go with it and breathe and just allowing it, but I guess I'm just playing mind games on myself. What I'm understanding is maybe just saying, yes, I am already.
No, the trying to go, the breathing and trying to go along with it is you're it already. It's not an alternative to the you're it already.
Okay, I like that.
It can look like anything, but when it looks like anything, that doesn't make it any different than any other time when it looks like something else. So it can look like all of this intensity and hearts and so on, and struggling with that, and trying to cope with it, and whatever. And okay, that's just a bad description of what you thought it looked like at that time. It didn't really look like that, because what it really looks like you couldn't possibly say. It's just too weird.
Yeah. That's helpful, thank you.
So I watched, there was some big guru in India, Nityananda. He's got a big following, and he was doing some celebration and like some transmission to give people psychic powers and whatever. So I watched that for like an hour yesterday. And
Did you get psychic powers?
not that I noticed.
I hope you didn't send your money in.
No.
Good.
Yeah, it was like half of it, most of it actually was like an infomercial.
Of course.
Yeah. And like he was making distinctions about like, you know, entertainment, like that most people have sort of restlessness about them, and they go to entertainment to try to relieve that restlessness, but then they just get more restless, right? And through that entertainment, right? And he talked about like difference between like engagement and what he called, he had this clever thing, engagement, right? That no one gets wrapped up in whatever worldly things.
Restlessness and getting wrapped up in worldly things is the very essence of God.
Uh-huh.
The very essence of radiant presence.
What
So-
did you read then?
Restlessness and getting wrapped up in worldly things is the very essence of God, the very essence of transcendental reality.
Thank you very much.
It's all part of the service. We aim to please.
Well, so he was making this argument that you needed to whatever meditate because and have some semblance of repose so that
He was really making the argument that you need to send him your money.
yeah, of course. That was-
All the rest of it was just a sales pitch. You could have had pretty girls in bikinis draped over sports cars and said, send your money that way, you know. But instead, he's showing this spiritual mumbo jumbo because it's so confusing to people that they think it must be something, even though it makes absolutely no sense to them.
Has anyone ever, anyone read Brothers Karamazov?
Not myself.
I really, I don't know. I mean, I'm really trying to get back into it, but it's basically sort of an exposition of all our conversations that we have here. Because one, there's a very spiritual son, you know, brother. There's another brother who's sort of like a real rake and a scoundrel. The father is totally dictatorial, but one of my favorite parts is the spiritual brother wants to start following this only, like, you can only get these in Russia, you know, like these mystic Russians. And there's this great rant and rave by the father, you know, and the one line that I remember, he said, well, of course, if you just eat berries, you know, you're going to see something eventually. I mean, it's just incredible to me what people do to see something that if they look inside themselves, they'll find.
Or look outside themselves and they'll find it. Or look outside themselves and they'll find it. Or don't look anywhere and you'll find
No,
it.
I mean, yeah, I mean.
Bury your head in the
You know,
sand
one
and
of my
deny
first-
everything and you'll still find
One
it.
of my
And then
first
that's the-
spiritual recognitions was with my Volkswagen, when I was trying to find it and I was clicking the light. I mean, yeah, you can do all kinds of things, but
You look for the looking.
I just,
You look for the looking.
Looking. Don't look for anything. Or not.
That what you are looking for is the looking or something. How does it go?
Looking is-
I assure you I don't know and I don't want to
Yes.
know. There is no looking, there is no finding. It's just a bunch of really weird ass shit in the vernacular.
I still don't get what you said earlier.
Earlier, which one?
That, I forgot.
Well, me too, so we're eating.
Was it the good one, the one that?
The one that you were cheering for. It was, being self-absorbed, or no,
Being
restlessness.
lost and
Oh,
not and
restlessness.
getting distracted is all the.
It's the very nature of reality.
And wrapping up in materialism.
Yeah.
Why is that nature of essence of God?
I don't know why. It's weird, isn't it? It's bizarre. Why? If I were omnipotent God, which I happen to be, as a matter of fact, but if I were the omnipotent God, why would that be mostly what I do? You know? Fuck. Excuse me. But I mean, look around. Look at yourself. Look at anything. That seems to be the, you know, the big game in town. And if God's not doing it, then who is? Where's it coming from? How could it be here? How could it be happening if reality itself wasn't doing it? There's not some unreality that is effective in doing anything.
Maybe only part of the reality is doing something, and the other parts is
Who knows?
nothing.
Who knows? But reality doesn't have parts. You go look in your experience, you can't find parts. It's all just weird. There's infinite differences of textures, but they aren't really parts because they don't have firm divisions between them. It's not like there's something here and something there and they're separated. It's this smear, this complete smear of all of these amazing textures and weirdness. And there's no dividing lines, there's no separation. And it drifts within itself and zooms in and zooms out within itself seemingly randomly, all of which creates these apparent drastic shifts in perspective. And again, but nothing ever happens because it's just different apparitional versions of the same thing. This weirdness.
So the whole thing is pretty meaningless and pointless, huh?
Sure. Except that it's the infinity of meaningfulness and infinity of pointedness from certain other perspectives. And since there's no true perspective, there's just all these different perspectives that have different implications. You can choose your favorite and, you know, hang out there if you want or pretend to. Doesn't matter. If God's doing it, it must be pretty important, right? Maybe. Maybe not.
Okay, Peter. If you do not fast as regards the world, you will not find the kingdom. If you do not observe the Sabbath as a Sabbath, you will not see the Father. So, okay, so fasting as regards to the world is...
That means what I call noticing. So shift your attention from whatever you're ordinarily, habitually absorbed in and notice that there's more. And that more is also right here, and that more coexists with what you focus your attention on and is equally valid, even though it's radically different in its implications. And as you investigate this, you find there's more, and there's more than more, and there's more than more, and there's more than more, and there's an infinity of more than more. And so that's where you are. And then given that perspective, where's the piddly little thing you thought you were focusing on gone? So that's fasting from the world. The world is whatever your habitual obsession is. You know, that's like the Gavin show. Gavin struggles with his latest modality. Or whatever, right? So that's the world, you know, that's your normalcy. But if you look within your experience, what else is actually present that is more than that, it's different than that? And you have to be pretty thick to not notice that there's a whole lot more that doesn't fall neatly into that kind of a category.
So always look for the moreness.
Always look for the bright side of life. Or the dark side. But just look, just whatever you're partializing, notice that there's more than that. Partialization doesn't actually exist. Partialization is a fantasy. Fantasy exists. But what fantasy claims to be about does not exist. The fantasy that there is partialization exists, but there is no partialization.
What is transmission? Like, is it like more of a mirroring and then an acceptance and then there's this like merging? Is that what transmitting is? I have no idea what that is, but I hear it, I hear people talk about it all the time, like a teacher, transmitting something to the listener or the student, and then boom, the student.
Transmission is meaningfulness, which is mysterious, but actual and is discovered for oneself.
Should I try another?
Don't ask for permission from me. You won't get it.
Jesus said, where there are three gods, they are gods. Where there are two or one, I am with him. And, why the two? What's the meaningfulness and actuality of that?
Don't know. I guess he thought he was talking about something. Maybe it's a crappy translation.
Two or one, well, that sounds like duality or non-duality or something.
Yeah, but you're trying to turn it into philosophy. And Jesus was not teaching philosophy. Jesus was teaching yoga.
He wasn't teaching like ways to trick yourself into realization.
Well, he was teaching yoga. Yoga is the investigation into actuality in order to recognize what it actually is. So it can look like anything, it can consist of anything, but it's not really about what it looks like.
I mean, those numbers, 3, 2, and 1, I mean, they're pretty sacred, and they embody a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but this is unimportant. It's unimportant what that particular quote means. If it doesn't resonate for you, and it doesn't particularly resonate for me, then who gives a shit what it's about? Maybe it doesn't resonate for us because we're thick, or maybe it doesn't resonate for us because it's a bad translation. But who knows what he really said in Aramaic that some guy wrote down 50 years later, and then another guy translated into Coptic 50 years after that. It's like playing telephone. You ever play telephone when you were a kid in kindergarten?
Yeah, it resonates for me because it's close to this famous sentence in the New Testament, and I've thought about that for a while.
Well, then enjoy your resonance. But the resonance is what's important, not the sayings.
So when you talk about a resonance, like there's there's like, it's almost like there's a familiarity of me with me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
That book has a lot of really good ones in it. Why don't you get to one of the good ones instead of these piddly ones?
Okey-doke. Okay, so I don't know if you want to answer this one or if this is fiddly. I'll just read it and you tell me yes or no. Okay, Jesus said, whoever blasphemes against the Father will be forgiven, and whoever blasphemes against the Son will be forgiven, but whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven, either on earth or in heaven.
Next.
Okay.
The Holy Spirit is Jesus speaks for the inherent intelligence, by the way.
Yeah. And the Father and the Son?
The Son is Jesus speaks for manifest, apparently differentiated phenomena.
And the Father is radiance.
The Father is transcendental being.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, the Father is presence. The Holy Spirit is radiance, and the Son is all of this apparition, qua apparition. But that's unimportant. Next.
Okay.
Come on, get to a good one. There's some good ones. There's a lot of good ones. I on my website, I even gave you a cheat sheet to tell you which ones the good ones are.
Okay, so here's
Why didn't
one
you
that
listen
has
to
a
me?
star next to it that is
All right, star next to it. All right, we're getting more.
Okay. Jesus said, two will rest on a bed. The one will die and the other will live. Salome said, who are you, man, that you have come up on my couch and eaten from my table?
What?
But that has a star next to it.
Who put the star there?
You did.
You claim that. You claim that. Prove it. Prove that I put a star there.
I looked at your website. There's a list.
Come on, go to a good one.
Okay. Let's just try another one. Okay. There's some.
You can hang it on the wall and we'll throw darts at it.
A Samaritan is carrying a lamb, and then.
There are no Samaritans. Okay, next.
Okay. No. Right, but there's a part at the end that's interesting where, Jesus said, "You too look for a place for yourself within repose, lest you become a corpse and be eaten." Next.
Sounds like good advice to me.
Okay. Non-comments. Okay.
A place for yourself within repose means in the radiant presence. And if you become a corpse and eaten, that means you're identified with phenomena which melt away and which you will always lose because you don't have anything in phenomena.
Yeah.
The only thing you actually have is radiant presence. That's also Jesus speaks, kingdom of heaven is a euphemism for a radiant presence. Anyway, that's irrelevant here. Next.
Okay. Okay, let's try this one. Probably this is no go either. Jesus said, the angels and the prophets will come to you and give to you those things you already have, and you too give them those things which you have, and say to yourselves, when will they come and take what is theirs? Next.
I think that was pretty obvious.
Okay. Amen.
The secret of understanding that one is what you already have. Why don't you start at the beginning? There's some good ones at the beginning.
Okay, very beginning. Right, lots of stars. There's 3 stars in a row.
See, why not who does the 3-star ones?
Okay.
You're going down to the dregs.
Okay, fine, okay. And he said, whoever finds interpretation of these sayings will not experience death. I think I understand that one.
Right.
Second one, Jesus said, let him who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will become troubled. But that's kind of easy as well, right?
Man knows everything. It's great. What do you need me around for?
Oh, okay, how about this one? Right, but this is number 4. It doesn't have a star next to it. Jesus said, the man old in days will not hesitate to ask a small child 7 days old about the price of life, and he will live. For many who are first will become last, and they will become one and the same. Right, that second sentence I don't quite get. I think I
What? First, say it, read it.
For many who are first will become last, and they will become one and the same. First will become last.
Because the first is the essence, the radiant presence, and the last means the only thing remaining, the only thing that never goes away. And they become one and the same because in radiance presence there's no division, there's no separation.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. Ones at the beginning are fairly easy.
You're doing research for a book or something?
Well, I would like you to write a book for me.
Me? No.
So I can read it.
You don't need a book. You've got books. You need to understand what the books are about.
Okay. One last one.
It persists.
So this one, so this is probably a piddling one that is not really of any, but okay. So Jesus said, "Love your brother like your soul, guard him like the pupil of your eye." But that's not important, or does that piddling next? I think that's pretty much all I got.
Then we're done here.
Okay, fine.
Moving on from the ever fertile fields of garbled sayings of ancient prophets. See, instead of looking at, like, writings in ancient history and translations and sayings, why not just look at this? This is the answer to all of that. So why do the elaborate circumlocution, hither and yon through all of this elaboration, when at best all it will do is bring you right back here where you started. And at worst, it'll leave you wandering around thinking you're getting somewhere, other than where there is to get. And when you see what's here, then you see that all the wandering around is what's here too. So then you're free to do the wandering without being entrapped by it. A realized yogi can get caught in anything, stuck in anything, do anything whatsoever, and is unaffected by it because he knows that it's all radiant presence, it's all transcendental. There's nothing there to entrap. It's all just joy, it's all bliss, it's all pure pleasure.
Did you say that again? Not exactly the same.
Yeah. Realize yogi, when you recognize what's here, then the yogi is free to go wandering around through all of these elaborations and confusions, and will not suffer as a result of it, because at that point they know that all of that is what is here. So you're not departing from anything. You can't lose anything, and you can't gain anything by what you seem to do or not do. So then you're free, you're bulletproof, and you see that this is pure bliss, pure pleasure, pure ecstasy, pure enjoyment. And so then one simply enacts what one's karma, whatever that happens to, whatever shape that happens to seem to be taking. And it is nothing other than radiant presence. So there's nothing to lose, nothing to gain. Just the joy of dancing with eternal weirdness.
So one just enacts one's karma. There's not a exhausting it quicker or.
No, there's nothing to exhaust. You're always enacting your karma. Exhaust is exhaust. What could exhaust? There's nothing there to exhaust. It's just flickerings of apparent patterns, morphing in the speed of infinity. There's nothing there. It looks as if there's something there, but you can't find anything. There's absolutely nothing here. There's all this, but all this isn't a this. Because what it is can't be found. You can't pin it down and say, oh, it's this, or it's not this. You can't, it's unresolvable. You can't say what it is. And if you can't say what it is, you can't even say if it is. All you can really say is. And you can't say what that means either, because that's not resolvable. Wandering around like a mad person through all sorts of insanity is only a problem if you think it's going to take you somewhere. When you see it's not going to take you anywhere and there's nowhere that it could take you because there is nowhere, then you're free. And then whether you call it wandering or not wandering, who cares?
It seems like there's a difference, like feeling one's all wrapped up in things and interpreting this and that to be a certain way, and then trying to make some sort of exit strategy and working real hard, as opposed to like feeling wrapped up in things but not caring about that because one realizes that it's all radiance. No?
But that there seems to be a difference between those is itself illusion. It's not true. There's no difference whatsoever. Knowing and not knowing are one and the same. Finding and missing are one and the same. And yet recognizing that, then that's finding. But you haven't found anything. You're just finding that there's nothing to find. You're finding that there's nothing to miss or not miss. So you stop playing these games of keeping score of, did I find it? Did I not find it? Did I succeed? Did I fail? Did I miss? There's all these games that you're trying to keep score of whether it was good or not, whether it worked or not. Nothing's good. Nothing works. just unending weirdness. Or you could say everything's good, everything works. That's worse too. Just another way of spinning it. But it itself is unspinnable. This cannot be spun. It doesn't need to be spun. It does the spinning.
So last time I was saying something about like I really enjoyed being in your presence, you know, and you were saying, well, take a look at that, right? And it's not like there's a recognition happening in that. I don't know. I want to say like that context, right? Whereas like if I'm all feeling all neurotically invested and worrying and running around or feeling like I'm running around, there's not a recognition.
You're trying to pin it down again. It can't be pinned down. That question has no answer. Because there's no this versus that.
Okay, so in terms of noticing practice, there's both situations are equally good context for noticing.
Absolutely. Everything's a good context for noticing. And what noticing will reveal is that there is no context. Because noticing transcends context. Noticing may seem to start off with an apparent context, but noticing by its very nature transcends that context into the unknown, into the unresolvable. And then, which also reveals that your original context is also unknown and unresolvable.
What is so reincarnation, the whole idea of it, I know it's part of the fantasy. And but you know, like historically people are like, oh yeah, I want to be in light, I don't want to come back into this world. There is no such thing.
Of course not. This world, this is light. There's no this world.
Yeah.
You can't not be in light. There's nowhere else to be. Light is all that there is. Whether the light looks like this or it looks like something else, it can look like angels floating in the clouds with harps and halos, but it's still just light. It can look like this and it's still just light. Look and see what's here. Look and see what it's made of. Look and see how substantial it is. It's just apparent patterns, flickerings of experiential energy. You can't find anything solid. But look very closely at what your actual experience is. You know, you can touch something, and touch. And then what is this feeling of touch? What is this feeling of hardness and solidity? If you look at it, you can't say what it is. It's tingles, it's zaps, it's fizzy, it sparkles. And all experience is like that. So where does this solidity come from? In pragmatic terms, when I say everything is light, what I mean is everything is what we might call experiential energy. And so if you look at what energy is actually made of, what experience is actually made of, it reveals itself as being made of what might be called experiential energy. And you can't say what that is because it's too weird, but it's everything. It's dynamic, it's color, it's sound, it's touch, it's thought, it's passion, it's anything. It's just weird little swirls, whatever. But all of that is exactly this energy that I call radiance. So radiance is not some abstract thing. Radiance is what your actual concrete experience right here, right now, actually is made of. It's like when you watch a TV show, all the TV show is made of is flickerings of light on the screen. It may look like, oh, there's a guy and he's talking about the Democrats doing this and blah, blah, blah. But all that really is just little flickerings, little dots of light, colored light, flickering and dancing on the screen. Your experience is just like that. Look anywhere within it and you will find this. Because there's nothing else to find. You can't miss it if you look closely. The trick is to look closely.
And it comes with information, with revelation.
Well, yeah, it is, because it is information. It's pure intelligence. It's pure implication. You know, and it's all very strangely and non-linearly, and you can't pin down what that is or why it is or anything else, but it's very obvious. You know, it's this infinity of luscious, juicy, you know, which worlds and worlds and worlds and worlds, dimensions and dimensions, without any of them actually becoming anything, because they're just implications of the energy, like dreams. Dreams don't ever become anything because there's nothing there. It's just a dream. But there's all this implication that it's this and it's that.
So that's like if you look at memory, there seems to be all these it's like a fragmented mirror, just like anything else.
Sure.
Right? And so there can be this sort of hallucination of past life experiences.
Sure. There can be hallucination of anything, but the of is all a fantasy of interpretation. What's actually present in memory is flickerings of light. Or let's, to be more specific, let's say flickerings of experiential energy. But calling it light isn't too far afield. Calling it radiance isn't too far afield, because you can't say what it is anyway, because it's unresolvable. But you don't need to resolve it because it's self-evident. It's right here. It's completely obvious. It's self-verifying. The presence of your experience is self-verifying. It's not a theory. Is my experience here or not? It's like that it's here is the given. So that is its authority. And then what is here? And this starts to get very slippery because you can't say. It's just it that is here.
So experience of realization is experience of light and light.
Light and light?
Light in light.
Light in light.
Light realizing its lightness, or whatever.
You can say that. That's nice poetry. It's not true only because nothing you can say is true. What's true doesn't need to be said because you can't, it's right here, you can't lose it. It never goes away, so why say it? You don't need to call it, it's already called. You can't uncall it.
In the last couple weeks, I've been having these interesting experiences, especially when I'm in like a party, like a big room, lots of people. I've always been kind of sensitive when there's a large crowd, and historically I would go to these workshops and then I would not sleep. Like as long as I'm around all these people, I go home with the buzz and then I just don't sleep. But I'm realizing that I've been kind of creating sort of a barrier, like almost like a invisible wall around me when I leave my house. It's almost like a protection. But that protection is like crumbling down the last couple of weeks. And so my experience, I've been more aware, like it's just like, it's almost like I'm feeling everything, like all the elements around me. And I noticed like some elements are louder and some are more subtle. And I also been having more emotional, just like release, just like driving, and I've been thinking about something, and then I feel really touched with those thoughts and just crying for no reason. So it's been really kind of interesting.
That is very good. Good yoga. You're doing very well. Keep up the good work.
Thanks to you.
Well, thanks to the apparent flow of your parents' karma. I'm just part of the cast of thousands, millions, whatever. You're the only one that's here. Or I'm the only one that's here. I can never tell.
No, I'm the older.
You said. Look at that, it's break time. So online people, we're going to take a break for about 10 minutes-ish. Accent on the ish. And we'll be right back.
No, she calls me yeah, like it's basically Gianni, but then she says it in a different dialect, Cantonese. So she calls me Gummy. So Gia is my name, and Ming is my first
And no one has ever called you John?
No one has ever called me
None of your
Gia.
relatives or anything?
They usually call me by both, like my middle name and my first name. That's how we traditionally call people.
And they call you Gami.
Gummy, yeah.
Okay.
All of my family, my relatives, they all call me Gummy. Gia is more of a, I guess, English
That's how I saw it.
version.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Did you have a nickname growing up? Or-
I don't have it.
Gavin.
You can have it. I can-
That's your full name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gavin James Bitchy.
And it's dynamic.
Is your
Yeah,
family still
oh, yeah.
there in Chicago or in
Yeah, in Chicago.
So you're the only one here? You don't have any family members here?
No.
Why did you come to California?
For graduate school at UC Berkeley.
What did you study?
Philosophy, religion, and dance.
That's interesting.
That was
I
really
wonder where
interesting.
you
Yeah,
philosophy.
yeah, I did that for many years.
So are you teaching or?
I just teach little kids, 5th, 6th, 7th graders.
Oh,
I teach them literature and yeah, literature.
It teaches a special course in the Gospel of Thomas for the 6th graders.
But
oh, that would be so cool.
You know, I have been teaching detective fiction.
Well, good, see? That's like the Gospel of Thomas.
That's been inspired
Who
by
done it?
We look at some clips of Sherlock, you know, and
Okay.
do some analyses of that, you know, try to teach them how to do, how to look for subtext, basically, yeah, and come up with interpretations. So instead of undoing their interpretive,
Right.
yeah.
You're addressing the problem by magnifying.
Yes.
Brilliant strategy. Kind of like a backfire when firefighters are fighting fires. They'll sometimes fight a fire by setting a fire behind the fire.
Sophia, Jesus was teaching. Did you hear what he said? What? Jesus taught yoga.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, I never heard it
Makes sense.
from that. Yeah.
Yeah, read the Gospel of Thomas. See what you think.
The original, I mean, from the Bible version? Or
No,
there's so many versions.
just the
Oh,
Gospel.
wait,
Just
how
go
did you
to his
get that?
website.
Oh, his website.
Follow a link. Because he's got one page with links, and so one of the first ones is to Gospel of Thomas, and he even tells you which passages he likes the most. So you can read those and then come back and ask him about it.
It looks like you asked most of the questions and then.
Yeah, yes.
I'm gonna take that.
Oh, no. Oh, okay, thanks. Charlie, what did you bring?
For food, I brought some dried persimmons.
Oh, you brought those? Those are like chocolate.
No.
I know, but they taste sort of like chocolate.
Do they?
They're
They
really
taste
sweet,
that way to me.
but they also kind of look like chocolate, the inside, because it's
Yeah.
all sort of dark. No,
No, they look like,
very sweet,
yeah.
very gourmet.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know what's gourmet about leaving something out to dry for a certain period.
no, they're pretty inside and out,
Yeah.
and look special, and taste pretty special.
Well, thank you.
And so you made them yourself?
They're from Berkeley.
Oh, really? Well,
Where'd you bring?
I brought mashed potatoes and Martinelli sparkling apple cider. So there's some more.
Do you work in the school system?
It's this after-school program that's on the weekends, test prep, college prep, sort of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, it's an okay job. It's a good job for those who don't like to work very hard.
I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't know. Have to work a little bit. But yeah. Sophia, she works there. How many hours a week?
15 hours a week.
Oh, okay. I know another massage therapist. She works like 15 hours a week.
Don't know, it's been a while when we got it. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How did you look at it? And that is,
Wow.
Saturday.
Oh, my pants? Oh, yeah, they're part of the pants.
Yeah. We do this in everything's absolutely.
Yeah. Fair enough. Now it's facing.
Well, yeah, it's verbal and non-verbal.
Russia. Star of the show.
Two can play that game. All right. You're off the hook.
get what you was and, there's some of this.
Gavin's hitting the bottle.
Yeah.
Is that Gospel of Thomas from his website?
I followed that link and then I just printed it up.
Are we back? We're backish.
Or backish. So, for what Gio was saying,
Which
earlier,
what you was saying?
about like feeling sort of sweethearted and open and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And you were saying that was good yoga.
Yes.
But so a while back, I felt like I was in that state in state kind of like that for a while.
No, but for you, that's not good yoga. For her, it's good yoga.
Oh yeah. Okay. Why would it be bad yoga for me?
Because the good yoga is not what she said. It's the way she said it.
Mm.
Don't worry about it.
So I need to try to.
You don't need to do anything. You need to stop needing. You need to stop needing, or see that it doesn't matter whether you need or don't need. That would be good yoga for you.
Been thinking a lot about Seinfeld
Mm-hmm.
and how the joke is that it's a show about nothing and therefore impossible to pitch to a network. Seems like interpretation is an attempt to pitch something to the network.
Sure, exactly.
Make the show about something.
Yeah, sure it is. Exactly that. When you can't say what's happening, you can't even say if anything's happening. Where does that lead you? I mean, it leaves you in heaven, as a main fact. But most people, the human normalcy doesn't accept that. But yeah, but what's really going on here? What's really happening? Heaven is free fall. Heaven is absolute indeterminacy, without needing to necessarily be that or not in terms of what it seems like. The point of yoga is to discover that you're in heaven, that you are heaven. Another way to put that is to say, the point of yoga is to see that there's no point to yoga.
So I'm always in heaven and always full of bliss.
Yes.
And so me searching the internet for some movie to enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
And feeling bored and out of energy, that's blissful, and that's just as enjoyable as watching the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to not watch the movie. Since it's the same, it doesn't matter. There's no subtle bias at all. There's no bias whatsoever. It doesn't matter at all what you do. You may as well do what you want.
Takes the pressure out of just living.
Yeah, there's no pressure.
Yeah, because it's like no guilt trip. Like
Yeah.
if I waste my whole day or something, oh, I wasn't productive. Well, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter if there's no pressure. Even if there's pressure, there's no pressure about that.
You are all your dreams lucid?
No.
No. But when you're sleeping and dreaming, you're always there's a way in which you're fully aware.
Yes.
And you're aware that you're aware.
I'm aware that I'm aware, and I'm aware that I'm aware that I'm aware, and I'm aware that I'm aware that I'm aware that I'm aware.
What I'm getting at is it's not just an abstraction.
No.
You're not.
No, when you discover radiant presence, you discover there's nothing but, and then everything is a dream. Or everything is radiant presence, and then dreams are just radiant presence. So whether you're aware or lost in it in stupidity and oblivion, it's the same thing. It's like when you're awake, if you're lost in it in stupidity and oblivion, it's the same thing as when you're like, Recognition of radiant presence means seeing its absolute inalienability. It can never not be what it is. And there's nothing but that. So sleep, awake, they're just words for the same thing. There's no such thing as awake. There's no such thing as asleep. There's no such thing as distracted. There's no such thing as concentrated. There's no such thing as clear. There's no such thing as unclear. It's just this. This. Always just this. Wherever and whenever you are, just this. And it's the same this. If you want to be analytical, you can call it the presence of your experiential field. But of course that doesn't stand up if you look at it closely.
So you would surmise that I'm as awake or aware as you are?
Of course you are.
Yeah.
You just may not know it. If you weren't awake and aware, you wouldn't be experiencing your experience. How could you experience experience if you weren't aware? Were you ever not experiencing experience? Was all this ever just stopped completely?
Not that I know
Well, if you don't know of it, then who would?
I caught myself kind of doing this thing, equating unsatisfactory karmic circumstances with motivation to explore yoga.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like wishing that maybe my circumstances were a little less satisfactory so that I have more motivation. And kind of came to a point where producing, attempting to escape into karma and thinking, no, the problem is escape. I gotta go into it. That dichotomy is false.
Yeah, completely false. There's no dichotomy. The difficulty or not of apparent karma and the desire to escape it and the desire to study yoga and anything else are all the same thing. They're just the transcendental life force, you can call it, the radiance. So trying to play games about it's this or that, and this is doing that, and that's doing this, and that because of this, it's that, and because of that, it's this, it's all just mental game. And yet, what that actually is, whatever you're calling it, is what your yoga looks like.
That when things become a cat in the box, when it seems to be, when a dichotomy is seen to be unresolvable, there's an inconclusive, it seems inconclusive.
Yes.
But
and that inconclusivity is conclusive.
Okay,
so that's unresolvability. That's the very nature of radiant presence.
So it's not like it has to. It's not like that seeing of that has to take another step.
It can't. There's no steps. There's no other steps.
Yeah.
endless, infinite, unresolvable paradox is always right where you are. And so recognizing that is seeing what is to be seen.
Oh, what's good yoga and what's bad yoga?
No such thing.
Okay, what's good
Good
yoga?
yoga is saying that there's no such thing, there's no difference between good yoga and bad yoga.
So Peter, all the words that we've been using and all the questions we've been asking, and all the answers and is everything just flavors and patterns and
Yes.
it's just all
And none of it matters.
right.
Doesn't matter. The words are totally unimportant. They're neither here nor there. We're coming to recognize the flavors and patterns, which are also unimportant, and neither here nor there, is the point. And when you see the absolute unimportance of it all, that's when you're free to be with it however your inclination is.
And also, I'm experiencing how we're all asking the same questions and you're giving the same answer over and over.
It would be boring if it wasn't so entertaining. Eh?
Well, being around you, to me, it really does feel like repose.
Okay.
Feels like what?
Repose, right? And feels like you're just sort of letting things go by and showing how to do that, or
I don't need to let them go by. They're going by whether I'm letting them or not letting them.
well, okay, so you redirect our sort of awareness or understanding towards realization of things going by.
Maybe, I don't know. What I do is your problem. I know why I'm here. Why are you here?
Hey, why are you here?
Well, I can't say.
I'm just enjoying the restfulness of it, the sort of freedom of it.
That's a nice thing to do.
So, like religious iconography, all it can really do is point to the, or try to point to the same sort of things that you point to about irresolvability and.
Ultimately, all symbols are symbols of radiant presence. Period. Whether they're religious symbols or mathematical symbols or linguistic symbols or any symbols whatsoever. Because that's the only thing that can be indicated. That's the only thing that can be referenced. That's the only thing that's here. So naturally, if a symbol is a symbol, it's a symbol of radiant presence, because what else is in existence that it could be a symbol of? They just have all sorts of apparent muddled implications that involves the apparent specifics and details of the particular symbol, symbology, and so on. But ultimately, none of that stands up to analysis, and it's all revealed to be of radiance.
But you could start with anything and talk about how it's radiance.
Of course.
Right?
How else? How could it be otherwise? If everything's radiance and there's nothing but radiance, what else are you going to do? The point of yoga is to see self-verifyingly the way that is so. And then it becomes powerful, it becomes unassailable. Or I should say, you discover that it is unassailable, and it doesn't become some theory that or wonderful notion that you have to somehow cling to or maintain or explore. It's just completely self-evident. It could not possibly be otherwise, so why bother even considering it? I never think about this stuff. I never think about radiant presence. I just drink it.
Yeah, well, didn't you think about it for a time there when you were?
I thought I was.
You thought you were, yeah.
I used to be very confused. And then I discovered that I am very confused. But I used to be confused about being confused. And now I'm not confused about being confused about being confused.
You have no confusion about the supposed clarity that you thought you could get to?
No, not at all. Not at all. Confusion is clarity. A little bit like 1984, war is peace, pain is pleasure, confusion is clarity. Except it's actually true. The trick is to see the way that is so. That's what makes it powerful. reality is infinite power. So coming to recognize it is the recognition of infinite power and identity of infinite power. Because the soul identity is it. So you discover that that's what you are, that's what this is, that's what everything is, it's what, you know. It's like a black hole that's already eaten everything. There was never anything for it to eat.
So Peter, I find in the Gospel of Thomas.
Oh my God, Kevin's got everyone going.
No, I'm sorry. You know, you need,
No, that's okay.
nothing's wrong with,
I'm just teasing.
with Google.
Yeah.
But I found a really good one. That sort of has a lot to do with what we were talking about tonight about, just seeing the radiance as it is. Anyway, here it is.
Which number?
83. Jesus said, "The images are manifest to man, but the light in them remains concealed in the image of the light of the Father. He will become manifest." I guess that means the Father will become manifest, but his image will remain concealed by his light.
Yes.
And that's just sort of.
Yeah. The illusion, apparition both conceals and reveals radiant presence.
Yeah.
So apparition is the manifestation of the absolute, and it also is the concealment of the absolute.
Yeah. I mean, so everyone keeps on, they're trying to get rid of illusion, or they think there's something wrong with it, but it's just part of.
Well, end of the day, good fucking luck. Good fucking luck.
Right. Yeah, right.
The very nature of reality, the very nature of radiant presence is infinite implication, none of which ever become anything, but all of which promise an infinity of apparent resolution, each of which is themselves an infinity of implications of apparent resolution forever with an absolute infinite fraction that never actually goes anywhere or does anything.
So that's what that means. I mean, his image will remain concealed.
Sure.
By his light.
Well, it conceals itself in its revelation.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this conceals the radiance which is revealed by all of this. It's just complete paradox. But as soon as you try to parse it and come down on the side of this or that, you're screwed because it doesn't work like that. There's no dichotomy between apparition and reality. There's no dichotomy between illusion and reality. Reality is that which presents as illusion, or that which presents as apparition, without ever becoming anything other than reality.
I remember you saying some time ago that one's shortcomings often end up being one's strengths.
Sure, of course.
Can you say more about that?
Your power is your nature, and your nature is all of your call it aspects. So they aren't actually aspects because they aren't separate and they aren't differentiated or manifest as such. And typically, the more obvious superficial things that are being defined as being assets or strengths are hidden. But the things that you're defining as your shortcomings are murky and hidden because they're being rejected. They're being pushed away and denied. And in that denial, they aren't how can I put it? They're being denied because of their potency. Strengths are obvious, but they're wimpy. They're watered down. Whereas your dark side, your kinkiness, the portions of yourself that you're repressing or denying, are the more direct manifestations of your power. And of course, it's not, strengths aren't actually strengths and weaknesses aren't actually weaknesses. All that is just a matter of more or less social conventionality in terms of what's socially acceptable versus what isn't.
The feeling that I get from that is the idea of reciprocals.
Right? Yeah.
Is that?
Sure. Okay. I mean, that works. But they're not actually reciprocals because they don't fall down into discreteness like that. They're kind of being held up as if they were reciprocals, but it's not really like that. Your shortcomings are really the strength of your strengths. So it's not like you have a strength here and a shortcoming here and they're separate from each other. The strength is just the knowledge portion of the shortcoming. Because they're not discrete, they're not differentiable, they aren't separated from each other. It all just is amalgamated in your nature, which is what's a good word? Well, anyway, it's amalgamated in your nature. Well, it doesn't become amalgamated, it is by its very nature. Nature is the amalgamation of all that.
So you're saying if there's a part of me that I'm rejecting or pushing away, and the moment I acknowledge it and accept it, highlighted, then it will be seen or perceived as strength.
Yes. Although it's not so much a matter of accepting it, it's a matter of seeing the truth that it is you, as much as anything is you. Which constitutes, pragmatically, it constitutes the effect of acceptance, but it's not like there's a you and you're accepting it or somehow opening yourself to it. You discover you already are it. So you already, it's too late. There's nothing to accept. You just, why bother to pretend to reject it? I mean, sort of a very simplistic way to put this, which oversimplifies it pathetically, is to say that civilizing is emasculating. So as a person becomes civilized and adjusting to the norms of society, they'll tend to be emasculated. They'll tend to lose their power or give away their true power through the kind of a censorship of socially unacceptable aspects.
That's the lust.
Yeah, exactly so.
So there's a part of me that I rejected for a long time. And then a few weeks ago, I had a joining with my friends and I kind of expressed it to her. And she's like, oh, it's okay. And I'm like, yeah, it is okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
And since that day, I've been feeling a little lighter.
Of course.
And when it does come up, it just it doesn't have the power, it didn't have the power like it used to, like a hold on me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, in this conversation, what we're calling the nature is what Carly called true will.
What was that you were saying about lust?
It's a tarot card.
Lust card? Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's not important, it's what we're talking about.
Lust, strength, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I say I don't know what the fuck is going on, right, like I can perceive that as a shortcoming, but it's actually a strength because it's recognition of reality.
Yes, but not to say it, but to see it. See the truth of it. Let go of your pretense of knowing anything. Or not let go of it, but see that it is a pretense. It's just a game that you play mentally against the backdrop of your cluelessness. Your actuality that is undefinable and unspecifiable. So you play a game of defining against the backdrop of actually what cannot be defined and is undefinable, which is what you truly are. And of course you're clueless about it, because how can you have a clue about something that's undefinable?
But in that proximity to the sense of a shortcoming, right?
Yeah.
There's almost like a feeling of like holding myself in, like a self-protective sort of inner gesture.
Yeah, but exactly, it's a holding. You're holding a definition. You're holding a defining, which has to be reasserted continually in real time with great effort, because in fact, of course, nothing is defined. So if you relax and let go, so to speak, what are you left with? All these definitions that you labor so hard to continually uphold.
Or it's like I have to I have to watch out because I don't know what's coming, right? But it's like I can't know what's coming.
Of course. So the fantasy that you have to watch out and that's going to somehow control things is a pipe dream. It's just not true. Everything is already completely controlled by its nature. It's controlled by what it is, not by the exertion of some steering mechanism or some, withholding it, not letting it go this way or not letting it go that way.
Oh, it's strange to see how much that's a fantasy.
Yeah, of course. It's a total fantasy. Not just how much, it couldn't be, every aspect of that is a fantasy. There's nothing, after the fantasy, there's no remainder. There's nothing left. There's nothing there.
feel like I need to investigate my shortcomings.
Of course you do. You have to get a handle on them. You have to define them quick.
No, just to see that they're not what I thought they were. Yeah.
But you don't need to specialize. Investigate anything, and you'll see what it isn't what you thought it was. You don't need to look at things as abstract as shortcomings. Shortcomings don't even exist. You're looking at imaginary definitions. I mean, that's a pretty difficult thing to look at. Why not look at this napkin? It's very easy to look at. You don't know what it is either. Much simpler. Why work where it's hard when you can work where it's easy? Because you find the same thing. If you find what you find where it's easy, then you don't need to deal with the hard because it's already taken care of. You don't get brownie points for making it hard for yourself.
No, it's like there's the attraction notion, you know.
There's what notion?
Attraction
Sure.
notion.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's a lot of energy, a lot of interest.
Sure, that's true. That's viable. On the other hand, it depends how perverse you are. You have to see what a pervert you are, and your obsession with diverting from actuality into defining. So you can do that, you know, by all means, but you're doing it the hard way. See, we can do this the hard way or the easy way.
Rather slog through some suffering and pain and difficulty.
Yeah, I know, that's your style. Yeah, you're a bit of a masochist there.
You can look at the worst behavior or the worst distraction, all of it, and you can see pure radiance.
Yeah.
Just you can look at the worst and
Yeah.
or the stupidest or the.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just nothing that isn't exquisite radiance.
Nothing.
So that's the easy path.
Yeah, this is the most holy path of fuck it.
I mean, it's so exquisite to investigate, you know, being grotesque or being dishonest. It's the fabric of it is it's infinite, and it's not just, oh, I see it as a radiance. I mean, it really is.
It's pure lusciousness.
And it can drop you to your knees.
Yeah, totally.
So you see what the napkin is really fully, clearly, and then you immediately see what everything else is.
Of course, how could you not? When you see the napkin, you see everything else. It's not like there's anything else that's separate from the napkin. This is the entirety of reality right here. Literally. See the way in which that's done. You can take that and put it on your altar if you want.
With the whole holy.
Just be glad I wasn't pointing to this dark shit when I said. That's what I was originally going to have on the cover of my book. Like a pile of dog shit on a sidewalk in a dirty urban setting. I ended up with a dirty urban setting, but I didn't find a good shot with the dog shit.
Wasn't your daughter, Angie, was looking for a good dog shit photo?
Was she? I don't
No,
recall.
Michelle, I think it was Michelle.
Oh yeah, I don't recall.
Yeah, someone was. It was Michelle.
It's hard to find a good dog shit photo, you know? I don't know why. There's plenty of it around. You think there'd be some, very artful.
You have to get an Asia.
Oh yeah, maybe so. We Americans are deprived in so many ways.
Seems like I can't do yoga anymore. I mean, not that I could before, but it definitely seemed like I was doing something before, and then it kind of seemed like something was happening, but it was clear that I was not doing it, and now there's no lost sight of.
Welcome to the club.
It's not very satisfying.
It's not, is it? Can't find anything. How could it be satisfying? The fantasy is there's something to find, something to get. Now that would be nice, wouldn't it? GFL.
Oh, it always takes me a minute.
My daughters can translate for you. Text acronyms.
On the other hand, it seems like there's nothing to do for me to do that. Seems like a cop-out somehow.
To do what seems like a cop-out.
It's like, nothing to do.
Well, it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Everything there is to do is to do.
Yeah.
If anything. it's not, you can't split it into this versus that.
Yeah.
You can't split it into nothing to do or something to do. It's too weird for that. It excludes nothing. Nothing is excluded, nothing is negated. But where are you?
But yoga is happening whether you're aware you're doing it or not, right?
Yes. Yoga is just another word for life.
Mm.
At certain phases, it can be called yoga more formally because it looks like a more intense engagement in things, in the reality of your being. But that's arbitrary because life is always an intense engagement in the reality of your being. So the notion of practicing yoga is just sort of a phase you go through.
Mm.
And before it, you're doing the same thing, and after it, you're doing the same thing. But in the middle, it seems like you're practicing yoga.
Mm.
Or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I call it yoga as just an arbitrary, traditional word that I hijacked.
So now you're not really practicing yoga, it's just happening.
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. Ask somebody that thinks they have a clue.
Is that what happened to Charlie? I mean, he thought he wasn't doing it, and then he was doing it, and now he's not doing it, but it's happening. It's
I
just he
don't
went
know.
through this
Maybe.
phase.
Maybe yes, maybe no. But how can you say what it is? As soon as you say what it is, you're making up that you know that you can define something, and you can't actually find anything that is definable. So you always end up with a big maybe.
If I had to guess, I would guess that there would probably be a certain point in which I fall into thinking that I'm doing it again.
Mm.
Well, you're young. You don't have the jaded nihilism of we oldsters.
That's what I'm saying. My karma's got to be like just a little bit shittier.
Not to worry. 30 days yet, you're young. It's a very interesting thing. Karma is always exactly perfect. The inconceivable perfection of the synchronicity of every single thing, the finest aspects of what seems to be happening. It's like so precisely right. It's very strange that should be so. And of course, you can't find it's so, but nonetheless, it is.
So precisely right, and what do you mean by that? How so?
I mean, everything is, a very simplistic, silly way to put it is everything is for the best in this best of all possible worlds. A maybe less silly way to put it is to say that the process of reality itself is enacted with inconceivable precision down to the smallest detail. Everything is infinitely synchronicitous. Synchronous, yeah. Synchronicitous. I make things complicated, don't I? Synchronicity.
that's karma.
Yeah,
You know, everything just works.
Yeah.
Together perfectly.
yeah. I mean, not that there isn't everything, not that there is a working, but if there was, it would be like that, you know. Let's say it's not like that. How about that?
Hey, there's still a couple minutes left. And,
Yes, there are.
It's, I was thinking.
No more Hospital of Thomas. I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, wait a minute. Go.
You got one.
No more Hospital of Thomas.
No, I was just thinking, you know, because it's Valentine's Day, you could say something about love.
This is the hallmark moment. Brought to you by our sponsors. Well, I was just talking about love. Love is the infinite harmony of every aspect of the reality down to its finest details with itself. Reality dances with itself with infinite responsiveness and precision because it loves itself. And that dance of unification is the expression of love.
Did you have a question? Oh, I was just thinking, like you know how you said you talked about how you first saw Lily, well, a couple months ago at one of the namastes.
Yes.
There was a woman that I met who was there, and I was just sort of I had that sort of experience of just sort of being blown away by the beauty of her aura, you know? And and then like I hardly talked to her, but she said some things about herself, her name, and where she went to school in Canada, and so I sent an email to one of her colleagues, and then so this girl finally got in touch with me like 2 days ago. And so well, I don't know, I guess it's like my romantic musings, but it's also kind of like that there's like such a satisfaction and delight in you know, feeling that sense of that love of beauty of something, like feeling that. You know. I don't know if there's a question about that, but it's just like there's like a desire to make something special, or to make a story about the specialness of something, right? And then there's also at the same time there's just a desire to just sit and appreciate what arises and seems so blessed,
Sure.
you know, right? Without having to make something of it,
Sure.
right? Or chase after a sort of relationship or semblance of a relationship that seems like it would be the sort of something that is, I don't know.
Sure.
I'd rather completely dive into that seemingly relationship in the most messy way and just go, wow!
Yeah.
And see that is that is the radiance. To just like, oh my God, this is incredible, this solid relationship. I'm going for it, this person, because that's it too. Right, I just.
You're saying, why hold back?
Yeah, I mean, holding back or not holding back is still the same dynamic of reality. You know, just going for it, like, oh my God, this is amazing. You know, oh, she's hot, or oh, I'm attracted to her, I want her, whatever. You know, for me, him, and it's all the same. And for me, that's where I have to dive in. I have to dive in to the full form, messy life, because that's where I see the radiance. I don't know if that makes
But
sense.
you're an advanced yogi, so.
I'm a champion for mess. I'm a champion for being totally inappropriate and totally stuck in manifestation. And that's where it opens up.
And then that is the absolute pinnacle of yoga. That's the refinement of yoga. When your yoga gets advanced enough to just say, fuck this spiritual stuff, fuck this purity, fuck this, refinement, and just let go into everything. And with that being the absolute truth. It's the ultimate integration. The beginning of yoga is finding what's special, what's outside of normalcy, and learning from that. And then as yoga proceeds, it gets more and more to be about looking back at normalcy and finding out that that's the same thing. And the tail end of yoga is the extreme of that, of just complete letting go into the sloppy horror of normalcy, and drinking it as the most precious nectar. I'm getting poetic. It's Valentine's Day. All right. On that note, good night, folks.